Happy New Year, number one, to you guys. And so, what a game, honestly. My brother texted me congrats after the game, and he asked me how my wife Stacy was doing, knowing that she's not a big fan of the games that go right down to the wire. And my response was, I think she's still in the blue tent. So as much as she doesn't care for those, honestly, I absolutely love them. I really do. And in the last 5 weeks, we've been through some really tough, games, and you go through those fires and against some excellent offenses, and you grow stronger and you go through them. And I couldn't think of a better time for us to go and have these hard games and hard opponents and hard stuff to go through, because that is when you get stronger. You use those games to study more, you learn on them more, and it's just a really cool thing. So with the postseason, and I'm calling it postseason with here our game going to, against Washington for a division title, man, you couldn't write that up any better. And so what a cool moment to be here, just as it should be. But, been truly tough and good, and all the things you'd want, things your defense to go through to fight and get ready. And so you do get stronger from that. And it's going to be a battle this week, and we're ready. So, but, man, I do love them as it gets close like that and fight for it. And it's the best. So all that said, let's get rocking with you guys and get you all the questions you can answer.
Hey, David Moore, Dallas Morning News. As you were saying there, this week is the playoff game as well, as far as you're concerned. Just from these last 5 weeks, the different type of games you've been in, and the injuries you absorbed early in the season and kind of moved on. Just where do you feel this defense is overall, as far as ready for what lies ahead?
And I think we all. You hear stats or big games or a blowout or a shutout or those, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for it. But it is during the toughest games that you really grow strong and you get through the tough things together. And so knowing that we've been in these fights, it does help. It matters. It totally matters. And so this is a pretty hardened group. And yes, you had to overcome injuries like every team does. Unfortunately, it's part of our game. But the part of being together and fighting for it and just knowing you're going to lay it all on the line for the guy right next to you, to me, that's what this time of year is all about. And there are some really tough-minded guys.
And is that two-point conversion, is that an example of what you're talking about from the standpoint everyone's focusing on the interpretation, but then you had an offsides, and then you came back and you stopped them. Even if you caught it, it would have been short of the goal line. So can you talk about the response there? And
I thought what you're kind of looking for in those moments is no flinching. And that could have been, I saw there's examples of it. They converted a fake punt. There wasn't a flinch. There was a turnover. There wasn't a flinch. And even in those, if the NFL is looking for new ways to go find a way, 2 out of 3 in a 2-point conversion competition is pretty good too. But honestly, those are hard. I knew when we jumped who the flag was on. So Bell intercepted it, and I said, we're going again. And so there wasn't a flinch, in my mind either, knowing that, hey, we're going to go fight for it again right here, and let's go play. And that's exactly what I said to JK, who had the helmet on at that time, to get you guys ready. We're going again. And because the easy thing to do is, oh, no, or here we go, any of those, and just knowing what's next, and there was no flinch on that. Those are the moments that you need, and you don't want them, but that's part of getting tougher and stronger and growing. And any good team needs that.
Dan Todd Archer, it's been the last 2 games you've had opportunities to end the game.
Can I start something on the New Year's also? I think Tad put this in, last training camp. I know who you are. I'm ready to go, but we'll have to, go with Tad if you want to, say your name. And there you go. I like it. Even better. All right. Get rocking. Back up. See, I threw you off now. Go ahead.
The last 2 games you've had your defense out there, end of the game, get a stop, win the game.
Yep.
When you see the results, you go back and say, should have called this differently, should have done some different things. How do you look back, specifically the Detroit game, when they take over, what you weren't able to get done in that situation?
Yeah, you always do that, no matter what. And so when you want to make sure, did you put them in the right spot? Did you get the right execution? Did we do what we said we wanted to do? And when you don't get the result, you go back to say, all right, I didn't like the result, but the process that we went through to, the calls were right. Sometimes you don't want to put the result in for, hey, somebody makes a good play or doing that. but this is a group that I really trust in that scenario. They've built that trust, with me over the last 3 years. So am I happy with the result over the last 2 weeks? Hell no. But to say that anything different that I would do, of course, maybe a call here or there, but nothing big that would be changed. This is a group I have unbelievable belief in. I seriously thought, all right, we're gonna get the quarterback on this one or onto this one. Like that was my mindset, kind of going down the drive.
And then on the first 2-point play, when they announce 70s eligible.
Yep.
What's the defense's reaction to that? Are you automatically lining up a guy over that because he's eligible? Or?
Well, it's pretty common actually for what they do, and he was actually in the game some. We call it a jumbo, where and it's usually 70 to go, and so the reporting process is there because they have released him on some keepers and some flats and stuff to go. So he was not somebody that doesn't ever go out for a pass. We're talking about in the regular field as well. So the process for us is, he's in here as a tight end. That doesn't mean he'll always, line up on the end of the line. They could unbalance and move somebody over, but we knew going in if that's the player that gets, qualified, then that's what we do. And I did hear that, even up, where I was sitting, they had 70s eligible, and so we were pretty equipped for that, knowing that that's their normal procedure for who is their big tight end.
So if they announce 68, you're changing where your guys are going to be.
Correct.
Okay.
Knowing that person is going to be as the tight end spot. Doesn't mean they're always going to align in the tight end spot, but that's how we would call that person based on a coverage.
Brendan Shaw, CNN.
This is awesome. I love it.
At the end of the year, we always talk about coaching opportunities open up, and your name always comes up. How do you say, you know what, I'll worry about that whenever our season ends? Because if you have any business, you're going to be home for a couple of weeks. So,
I think it's important to know how to compartmentalize. And fortunately for me and into that space, any preparation that you would do onto that is done, over the summertime to go. And, if and when that time, gets called, I would certainly be ready, to discuss that at a moment's notice. But it's pretty easy to stay compartmentalized. I mean, quite honestly, that the guys, that I get to coach were a big reason why I wanted to be back here. And so I'm not going to let that moment, I'm going to not miss 1 second with them.
Like last year, you could have had a chance to go more so than previous year. Did that bonding you have with your guys, because a lot of these kids you drafted, did that also?
Absolutely.
Just to keep
Yeah, I just didn't want to see anybody else, coaching these guys, and there was unfinished business in my mind. And so that was a big reason for me, knowing that, I had unfinished business, with them, and I wanted to see that all the way through as much as I could, and absolutely feel that way again. So it's easy to compartmentalize, knowing that, you just stay in the here and now, and I kind of live my life into that space anyway, and so it's not as complicated as you might think.
Dan, yesterday we saw Miami lose Bradley Chubb for the season. I'm just curious, you never want to lose a guy, but you lost Trayvon and Leighton, and those were earlier in the season. Did that, I mean, if you are going to lose someone, does it kind of give you more, I guess, I don't know, time to plan and everything and getting a flow going into the playoffs as opposed to having to do that?
I don't know. I'd give anything to have, those two guys still here with us. So I think Bradley probably helped him kick a lot of ass for a long time. So if he got hurt earlier, you might say, well, the guys are ready, but it just sucks. It just does. I don't think there's ever a good time when a guy gets injured. I can remember, playing in the Super Bowl when we lost, or he ended up playing in the game, but Cam Chancellor got hurt on the Friday before the game. And you talk about, being nervous or, can he come back? And he was so damn tough that he did. But I don't know if there's ever a good time, for a guy that is one of their leaders and impact players for them to go. Any good team goes through it, and they will too. But you just hate it for a guy like that that's really putting out some good tape and playing well. But it is part of what we do. It sucks, but you always have contingency plans ready when those moments come, and you'll be surprised. Somebody will step up that they weren't, thinking of, and it certainly happened with Phillips already with them. So other people have stepped up in that space, but it sucks. I don't know if there's ever an ideal time.
And for you guys, I mean, Duran, the way that he's kind of settled into his spot, and you guys have seemingly got a plan at linebacker and things, like how much is that, how impressed are you with how people have responded to those adverse situations you guys?
Yeah, you have to go through it a little bit and put the guys into the spots. But I was really proud knowing, like, for a guy like Bell to change position after, Demo got hurt, because he was certainly going to be a big factor in what we were going to be doing this season as well. Because he got injured prior to the regular season, it doesn't get, spoken about as much as, Trey or Leighton, but he was going to be right in the middle of this for us as well. So I am proud. I know it's part of it. It keeps you up at night, to make sure you're getting the right work for the right guys in the right spaces, and we still do that. And we're fortunate from the league standpoint where the practice squad has expanded, and now you see more players getting opportunities to play, even if it's, for a short time, for a week or for 2 weeks. I really think there's a real advantage to that, and having those players. Not all guys on the practice squad are developmental. There's some guys that are ready to play, at a moment's notice, and certainly having the veteran exceptions is a really big piece to that. So kudos to the league for finding a way, knowing that when we added an extra game and the benefits of having those players be available, we'll need them, and we have, and I know others do as well.
Hey Dan, what or who would you say are the biggest contributors towards the run defense really being able to bounce back last couple of weeks against top 5 rushing offense?
Well, I thought, number one, we tackled better. So I wouldn't necessarily put it onto one person, but I think, don't quote me, exact numbers. Might have been 5 against Miami, and it might have been 5 against Detroit in terms of missed tackles, and we were in double digits in the game prior to that. So I don't want to just put it all onto one player when we didn't tackle. And so to see us recapture our energy and our speed and our hitting, that was a big piece of it, to make sure like we could fully express how we want to play and make sure that style comes to life. I'm hopeful that Jonathan Hankins, will make his way back in. He's working hard and trying to get back just as fast as he can. But I wouldn't, put it necessarily on one player as much as I thought we really improved on our tackling. And that's who we are. And we've been a good tackling team. And so to have, the game or games where we didn't, that was disappointing. And so over the last 2 weeks, although we didn't get the result we wanted in Miami, I felt the energy, the hitting, the tackling. We did recapture that, and I felt that again. And that has to be every time we play, that you and our friends and our family see that and say, man, you guys are flying, you're hitting, and that's really what makes us go.
Would you say there was a major uptick in containing the edges with D-Law and Mike Parsons?
Well, for certainly Law and Micah too, but not just him, but Law just has a knack of knowing when to make a unique play. It might have been on the goal line where he, created a tackle for a loss or a third down tackle for loss. If there's a big play meter in a run game, I know I'd want to put Law into it, because he is usually where it goes down, and he's made incredible plays for us on third down stops and fourth down stops. So he's finding his own way to impact the games, and it's been really cool to see.
Michael.
Trent Krim, the Independent. Your shirt inspired me. Can you elaborate on DeMarcus' ability to do so? Because it is consistent. It's been for years, but he shows up. Why? How?
I got to think a good bit of it is his instincts to do that. Here's a veteran player who's seen a lot of football, and sometimes, like you've seen us talk about a quarterback, he's seen all the pressures, he's seen all the looks. It's hard to fool him. It's hard to, change a coverage where he hasn't seen some things. On the flip side, for a player that's played as much football as DeMarcus has, it's hard to get him. He has a sense for where it might be going, and in short yardage, there's a term that we use, when to go take a shot. And that means you have information that you think you can go make a play. It's not just, hey, I'm just going to, run out of my gap or do something. But taking a shot is when I have all the information, I think this play is about to happen, and then you go make it. He has that in spades. And so knowing when to take a shot is really important, because if you just go crazy and, think of a linebacker, running through a gap and it's a play pass, it didn't do any good. But when you know that play is coming and you're able to go get it, I think his recall and his anticipation for that, Michael, is probably what sets it apart. It's hard to teach that, but you teach the looks, and this could happen, but he can make it come to life.
How does communication seem a big part of that, in terms of if he's aligned at 3 technique for a certain play or 5, and the 1 has an idea of something he wants to do,
Correct.
or something along those lines, he's crashing into DeMarcus while he's, being him. then all of a sudden DeMarcus isn't able to
Correct.
be himself. So how is it just like, okay, Tank, you can do whatever you want, everyone else mind your assignment, or is it?
No, there's usually a call that's made at the line. Sometimes it's a hand signal, sometimes it's verbal to say that a play or a direction or a certain thing could be happening here. And so hearing that communication amongst, and then passing it down the line like a telephone game, that's when you know it could happen. It could be as easy as a run or a pass on a short yardage. It might be a right side or a left side direction and a run. But knowing when those things happen, or hey, it's going to go over to your side, or those are the little alerts that the guys can give to one another. So we use signs, we use verbal communication. Obviously the signs are nonverbal, and having those little markers make it, because what you can't do is, like you said, have two guys, trying to do their own thing, and it gets all out of whack.
And then lastly, sorry, when people look at defensive end's career, they look at the statistics, and they see sacks, maybe one they'll see pressures, but those are kind of the hallmark statistics. For what a lot of what DeMarcus does, he's got some of those metrics, but the run defense stuff isn't represented there. Do you think he's just destined to be underappreciated in terms of his career when casual observers, or maybe people can just kind of lose sight of just how good he was at his time at certain things that just don't get fully grasped?
And now that we're getting much stronger than we ever have been, and with technology and Pro Football Focus, all of the nuances, maybe there's something that comes into impactful plays for a guy like him, that it wasn't just, in this season he had this many sacks, this many, like you would see, how good was so-and-so. But knowing that the impactful plays for him, the third down stops, the TFLs, the fourth down stops, maybe there's something, as we're moving forward, that could mean that, because you're always looking for something to get there. And there's certainly some players that just impact the game so strongly. Their numbers might have not been the highest of anybody, but it was very hard to measure. And one player that I was fortunate enough to coach was Bryant Young, and he was certainly that way. He was so damn tough and made plays. And part of his career, he was in a 3-4 defense, so he might have not had the same numbers. But I'm telling you, if you asked anybody who lined up against him, they say he's hard to block as there is. And I would imagine years from now, and you asked an offensive tackle who was hard to go against, and I bet DeMarcus would be one that they'd bring up based on his ability to be in, be out, be in different spots. And I'm excited to see where it goes, because he's no longer just playing one position. And by moving him around, it's allowed himself to express himself into different ways that maybe he wouldn't if he was just playing left end. Not saying they were wrong. I'm just want to make the point that sometimes when you move somebody into different locations, some cool things can happen, and he's an example of that.
You guys have been chasing in the standings for 2 months now, needing some kind of help. Now it's flipped. All of a sudden, your fate is in your own hands. How do you sort of preach business as usual with that change going into a game where you're pretty heavily favored?
Yeah, I'd say it's a good question, and I don't know if business as usual is that. Sometimes an opportunity comes and you got to go get it. And so I don't know if that's business as usual, but you recognize when moments come. And I think any competitor can do that, knowing I just made the finals, I just did this, I just got to this spot, I just, and then I got to go get it. And when you have that attitude, knowing when those opportunities come, you go and you take your shot and you make your mark and you go for it. And we certainly have a group that will do that. But like I said, it begins now, and you certainly can't. Everybody else in here can do all the math for who will play after that. Like, to me, it is just this game and just this weekend, and we go get it and bring it, and then we'll talk about next week into next week. So it's more about the moment and here and how we go get it on.
Dan Donovan Wilson's got 23 tackles the last 2 weeks, had a clutch interception. What have you just kind of made from of his performance the last 2 weeks, and just kind of his trajectory coming back from the injury?
The number one, I thought just the interception in the fourth quarter was just a fantastic play. It was mirrored routes to both sides, and both he and Jordan were playing the same technique on opposite sides of the field. But I thought his ability to catch it and turn and make sure it was going to stay the catch, that play, and then there was a play as a toss play going to his right down near the end zone. I thought those two plays really sum up him. He's a hitter, he's a tackler, playmaker, so we try like hell to put him into those spots where he can do his thing. But he and DeMarcus on our defense are always the ones that set that energy and that tone and the energy-generating plays that happen. And they're very similar in that way, that they're just find this way to make the big hit, to make the big play, to go. And so putting him into those spots, it's so important. So, yeah, it's really cool to see him being right where he's supposed to be and making the plays that are uniquely, suited for him.
Dan, 17-game schedule. I'm assuming you don't rank your guys 1 through 17 how they played each week, but Jordan Lewis seemed to make a whole bunch of dynamic plays. The one, basically his job was to turn the thing back in, and he makes the tackle.
On the reverse.
Yeah.
Yes, crazy.
How well did he play in that game?
I thought really the last 2 games were ones that really stood out to me. He's just as tough as you come, and one of our very best competitors. And sometimes during the week, we're showing, film from last year in the Detroit game, and we have takeaway meetings and stuff that, generate that. And I always kind of quickly passed by his play that he got injured on. If you remember, it was an interception. He landed on it, super awkward, and the injury was there. And it was a really significant one to say, will he make it back from this? But if you had to put your money on it, babe, to say, I'm going to put some money on somebody, he'd be somebody you'd put it on, to say, he's tough enough. He'll find a way. He just will. And so over the last couple weeks, you saw some blitzes and some tackles for loss, some big impactful plays. And I think, just as I was talking about Donovan, we like putting Jordan into the fight because he's not only capable of it, but he thrives in that. And so as one of our very best competitors, we were talking earlier about those moments and how you feel for it, he's one that really wants to be into that space, wants to be in the fight, loves it. And so I'm super proud of him, for not just for the last 2 games, but, his ability to absolutely overcome and go get it. And, he's showing and proven that dog. And I don't think I've seen it any more than I have over the last 2 games.
Finish up with Chris.
Mike McCarthy, we were talking to him earlier. He was talking about over the course of the long season, every couple of months, a team will start trending, doing something different. Now, I wonder, it's only been several weeks since playing Washington, Thanksgiving. Do you see something trending with their offense? And also this past week, they're putting in a game plan and they're thinking it's for set. And then last second, they have to go back to Howell.
Yep.
Could you see if they had to change stuff up last second?
Well, I know they're equipped to, and the good news is, like, for them, Jacoby's been there with them to go through it, but I wouldn't be able to know, which was for which or which was for the other, but we'll certainly prepare for both. Obviously, I've faced Jacoby. We've known him for a long time. In fact, we were, for a season together back in college, not he and I in college together, but at a college at Florida together. But he's a great competitor. He really is. And so we'll just see how it plays out. Their skill players really stand out to me. They always have. They've got tough-ass running backs, receivers that can do it. And so tight ends that are long and fast. It's just an excellent group. And whether it's Sam or Jacoby, we'll have our work cut out for us based on those playmakers alone. And as a division game, it's going to be tough. They just are. It's just how it goes down. And so we'll be ready to fight, and I know they will be too.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, you guys have a good afternoon. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.